Crystal?
Yeah, you're good to go.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the April 21, 2022 meeting of the Baltimore County Planning Board. It is now called to order. I'm Nancy Hafford, the chairwoman, and we'll now start our meeting with a roll call. And when you hear your name, please say aye. Mr. Schweitzer. Ms. Panero. Mr. Halipka.
Aye.
Mr. Johnson.
Aye.
Ms. Wolfson.
Aye.
Mr. McGinnis.
Aye.
Mr. Heckman. Mr. Heinel.
Aye.
Mr. Perlow.
Aye.
Mr. Warren.
Aye.
Mr. Caligari.
Aye.
Mr. Fotis. Mr. Avery.
Aye.
Ms. German.
Aye.
Thank you. Please join me.
I am here also, Nancy. I'm just having some technical issues.
Oh, thank you so much, Mr. Heckman.
Thank you.
We were unable to hear. Did you hear our discussion previously?
I could hear everybody, but I couldn't talk.
Maybe we can chat tomorrow if that works for you.
Sounds good.
Thank you. Now let's say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. Ms. Tracy, are there any changes to the tentative agenda as published?
No changes, Madam Chair.
Thank you. In the April 14th email, you received draft minutes from the March 3rd, 2022 meeting. Has everyone had an opportunity to review the draft minutes? Okay. Are there any corrections? If not, may I entertain a motion to accept the minutes as circulated?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Next on the agenda, we have a presentation by Ms. Jennifer Meacham, Chief Research Analyst and Design in the Department of Planning, on the 2021 Baltimore County Annual Growth Report. This item is scheduled to be voted on following the presentation and any discussion. Please join me in welcoming Ms. Meacham to fill us in on the 2021 Baltimore County Annual Growth Report. Ms. Meacham.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and Planning Board members. The land use article in the Annotated Code of Maryland requires that the charter counties prepare the annual report on growth. The report summarizes residential and non-residential development in Baltimore County in 2021 and analyzes whether the new development is consistent with the county's growth management policies, Master Plan 2020 land use goals, and state smart growth principles. The report is due to the Maryland Department of Planning by July 1st. Next slide. In 2021, there were 28 development plans approved, including 6 majors, 16 minors, 4 planned unit developments, and 2 limiteds. The total number of residential units in those approved plans was 1904. 58% are single family attached, 30 were multifamily, and 12% were single family. 99% of those units were proposed inside the URDL. Next slide. In 2021, 15 non-residential development plans were approved for commercial, mixed use, and office uses, with a total of 1,460,940 square feet of space approved. 70% of the approved square footage is located inside the URDL. Next slide. This table shows that in 2021, the number of constructed residential units with occupancy permits was 1,323, which was slightly lower than the 2020 number. Among all new residential units that were permitted for occupancy in 2021, 93.27% of the total units were within the URDL. Next slide. Here's a map that shows the distribution of residential occupancy permits for 2021. Next slide. So 99.69% of all non-residential permitted construction was situated within the URDL. Occupancy permits for non-residential construction indicates that the industrial development represents the largest use type, accounting for 45.58% of the total floor area among new buildings in 2021. Next slide. Here's a map that shows the distribution of non-residential occupancy permits for 2021. Next slide. In the 2020-2021 school year, the full-time enrollments of 3 elementary schools and 3 high schools were at or over 115% of their state-rated capacity. The full-time enrollment of all middle schools was below 115% of the state-rated capacity. A school impact analysis was performed for each proposed development project with a residential component that falls within these districts that are greater than 115%. No new schools were opened in September of 2021, and the new Rossville Elementary School will open this fall in September of 2022. Next slide. The Department of Public Works and Transportation indicated that there were no deficiencies in public water known to exist in 2021. For sewage services, the Department of Public Works has continued to monitor all of the sewer relief point locations. In addition, Public Works has projects still in design that will eventually eliminate these areas of concern. Next slide. There are 12 F-level intersections and 1 E-level intersection that was proposed on the 2021 Basic Services Transportation Map that would control development. These intersections are listed on this slide. Next slide. In 2021, 14 road projects were constructed or extended, totaling 1.3 miles in length. 50% were constructed inside the URDL. This table shows the names of those newly constructed roads. Next slide. 570.71 acres of preserved land was added in 2021, yielding 68,314.886 acres of total preserved land in Baltimore County. In comparison, 693.15 acres and 1,076.74 acres were added to easements in 2020 and 2019, respectively. The largest amounts in preservation in 2021 were achieved via the Rural Legacy Program. The total preserved land accounts for 85.39% of the Master Plan 2020 goal toward 80% of preserved acres. Next slide. This map shows the spatial location of the preserved lands in 2021 by program. And that's the end of the presentation. Does anyone have any questions?
I do.
Okay.
And I ask this question often, but we had 1,200 and some building. Is that single family and multifamily housing, or is that all including industrial?
For the residential permits?
So what was the total residential permits, I guess is what I was.
There were 1323 residential permits.
And do we know how many available building lots we have left?
We do. Inside the URDL, let me look that up. I think it was in the main report that I sent to you.
Name tag on here.
I'll have to bring that up really quick. 1 second.
I know table 18, because I had the same issue, shows the development capacity. It's about a little under 11,000 vacant lots at moderate capacity.
Thank you.
Todd, if I may, I raised this issue with Jen when she was putting together the report, because one of the questions it presents, at least from a broad planning perspective, is that if you look at the number of permits annually and how many lots are remaining available, the amount of years we have to fully build out is shrinking. And so the need to refocus more on retrofitting, redevelopment, call it what you want, I think it becomes even more heightened. I think in my conversations with Ms. Meacham before, we're talking about less than 20 years to full build out. Unless we, change the hurdle or change some of the other dynamics. And I think the focus needs to then be on what we do within the existing communities and how do we strengthen them with some different strategies.
That's a huge concern of mine for a long time, and I'm not a great mathematician, but 11,000 divided by 1,300 is about 8 years of capacity left to build. Now, we may add some additional increased zoning during that period of time, or some PUDs that would allow us to build a little bit more. But I think if you looked at those 11,000 lots, many of them would not be what I would call desirable lots to build on, or may not even be able to be built on under current codes and whatnot. So, that would be, so I think that number's smaller, and it drives a bigger national problem that we have, but it's a huge problem in Baltimore County, where the average price of a new townhome is creeped over $500,000, which makes it unaffordable for the average household income in Baltimore County, which is something I think we all need to be concerned about.
Well, one of the things I've noticed they're doing in Towson is they're converting some of the office space into residential units. And like we were discussing prior to the meeting, a lot of people are working at home and they're not going to the offices. So I think we're going to see a lot more of that happening all over the county, all over everywhere in the future.
Well, Madam Chair, you're correct about Towson, but the zoning in Towson is different than in other parts of the county, which if you're going to start converting commercial property into residential, or you want to have a mixed use development, for instance, the current zoning really is inhibiting it. And one thing that we've talked about a number of times throughout the whole master planning process is, do we need to re-examine permitted uses within certain zones? Because to your point, people often want to either live closer to their work, or they want to live in a mixed use environment, or we just need to accommodate more residential, which is more likely to be more dense and not all single family detached, the way we've seen most of the county grow out.
I agree, Mr. Lafferty. I think we're going to have to, things are changing, and we have to be able to change with it.
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
I think the migration is a 2- and 3-step approach. As they move away from Baltimore City into the county, then the next step is they will move further away from the dense population to something where the area where housing is cheaper and land is cheaper and there's not as many people. So the next step is they move either to Pennsylvania or Harford County or Carroll County. And that's a natural movement of people. As one area becomes more dense, they move to an area where it's less dense. And I think that's a natural migration of people.
I would disagree with that, Wayne. I don't think it's natural. I think it's because you sort of said it yourself. It's because things are cheaper. My sister moved out to Stewartstown, 20 years ago, but they had a lot the rules were a lot more lax, and so they were able to find housing at a lot cheaper rate. as we, I think, as Todd would point out, as we restrict the number of units available closer, it raises the prices. And so even if they wanted to live closer, there are financial reasons why they get pushed further away. But a lot of those places, I mean, I've been trying to pull together these kind of reports for, Carroll County, Harper County. This is a nationwide problem, as they were saying. We're seeing this across the country, and there are, I think, steps that other jurisdictions are taking to try and address some of this, without necessarily turning everything into a bunch of high-rise, communities.
Well, but I think that's, if we think back to even the last zoning cycle, to our hearings, there was a developer that wanted to do apartments behind some of their shopping centers, which would be mixed use, and we pretty much turned most of them down. If I hear 1,300, units were approved last year or had use and occupancy permits done, and I think 600 of those I saw quickly on the screen, and that's why I still like to have the meetings there so I can ask the questions again, or that the reports stay up on the screen and I can be looking at them and asking questions as I go along. But 600 of them were multifamily. Well, that's not a lot of units, guys. We've continued for the last 10 years to build 300-400 single family and 300-400 townhouses, and that's even with PUD approvals. I'd like to see at some point, if the planning department can get it, where we think these 11,000 units are. I don't know if there's a way to show it on a map, to show us what districts they're in. I really tend to question that. I know a project that's starting right now, 700 units in White Marsh, but that'll be built out in 2 years. And I just don't see a whole lot other than, I apologize for that, other than maybe a little bit on the east side, Back River, that kind of area. There's been some stuff there, but you do have all the wetland issues and all the, the Chesapeake Bay issues, anything closer to the water there. So there's not going to be a whole lot of development over there. It is a concern. I agree with Todd. You're looking at, 8 years maybe, but really maybe you're only looking at 6 years, because of those 11,000 lots, some of them are going to be undevelopable. People are moving out. I will tell you there's a huge amount of future development being looked at in Cecil County. I'm very involved with LifeBridge Health. One of our employees bought a house out there, and I asked him when I did his settlement, I said, why did you buy all the way out here? You got to drive, an hour and 10 minutes to work. He said, because I'm getting better schools for my children, and I can afford to buy, the house that I want to buy for them, his 4 or 5 family members. That's what it is. It really comes down to price. Anne Arundel County has pushed their townhouse prices into the 550 range. The White Marsh project that I'm talking about is going to start in the 450 range. That's going to now be our affordable housing in Baltimore County. And if we have become and are a somewhat minority county here, we're going to find our problems with affordability here, whether it's city people moving out to the counties or whether it's just young people trying to buy their first home. At that point, we have a huge more expense in the last 15 or 20 years of design costs. We sat and looked at a project out here in Reisterstown in Glendon, and we told the developer he had to, make the back of the house fancy, basically, is what it came down to. Well, it's nice if you want to put that on, put the gingerbread on the back of the house, but somebody's got to pay to buy that gingerbread and then install it. So I really do think we have an affordability issue. I've seen concerns about affordable housing in general in our county with our consent decree and other things that, we just haven't been willing to accept it yet throughout the county. And, that's when federal money and state money comes in to help with that kind of construction. But if we're going to turn it down and not be willing to approve it throughout the county, not in one area or 2 areas or 3 areas, but throughout the county, we're going to have a real crisis coming on our hands, I think, in the next 5 or 10 years.
Thank you, Mr. Perlow. Are there any other questions or comments right now?
One more comment. I know.
Okay, just like Kathy's been patiently waiting. Let's give
I'll
her a
wait,
chance. Yeah, thank you. Kathy, you got to unmute yourself.
I think to Nancy's point, I don't think we're taking Nancy's point seriously about this, about the office space. I think we're going to have to be realistic about transitioning that office space to residential space. I don't think continuing to build out into open space is going to address that problem. We're just postponing the inevitable unless we just want these huge vacancies in our commercial areas. You know, that's something I think we're going to have to look long and hard at, is how these commercial areas are zoned so we can accommodate more residential
Thank you, Ms.
inside
Wolfson.
their hurdle.
Thank
Thanks.
you, Ms. Wolfson. And Mr. Warren, I'm going to give you a chance to speak in a moment, but is there any other board members we haven't heard from yet?
Yes, Nancy, this is Mr. Johnson. Is there any way that we can get some kind of report as to what's been built in or what's vacant in the different areas of the county, just to see where we are and what's been built, what's vacant?
On the planning staff, who can answer that question, please?
How about Jen Meacham? We have that, don't we?
We do, yeah. Yeah.
We can provide that.
Thank
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Meacham. Any other questions besides anybody else right now that hasn't had a chance to speak? If not, Mr. Warren?
I'm a big advocate of redoing some of these commercial, especially shopping centers. As a banker, I know that they're underutilized, and we have the infrastructure there. But I, as the banker, I just have to get like a statistical or a financial analysis around this, because I'm very passionate about affordability. So if the average household income in Baltimore County is slightly under $100,000, the maximum mortgage that a person can get is around 3.5 times their household income. That gets them to a thing called a back end ratio that we use of around 35%. So if they can do that, they can afford a house roughly of $350,000, and the average house, a new townhome, is closer to 500. As Howard says, they're starting at 450. That's like smoke and mirrors. By the time you finish a basement or do any additions to it, they're $500,000. So what you're saying is the average household income, the average person, not the poor person, the average person in Baltimore County cannot afford to buy a house. Baltimore County, as an employer, as a member of the community, that's just acceptable. And the only way to do that on a simple supply and demand curve is to add supply. If demand is stable, which frankly it's gone down because we just don't have the places to build. There's not a lack of people wanting to build houses. There's just not houses available to build. So that's why you see that number from, was as high as 1,800 when I started on the planning board, down to 1,300 now. It's not because there's not people that want to build a house. It's just not available. So
I'd like to see if we could, Jen, at some point, because we haven't seen it for a while, I don't think, is what the permits were for maybe the last 8 years, because I remember some years where we only had like 300 in the last 6 or 7 years. So it might be worth looking at a 10-year plat of it to show us what it's been, because maybe we did 1,300 this year because of the White Marsh project, but there's been an awful lot of years that just haven't had the density that you would think, even over an older county, getting older as we speak, that there really is not a lot of growth potential for the residential side in our county. I'd like to see that maybe at a future meeting.
I think another thing that we need to take a look at is, because of how the world has changed over the last couple of years, and COVID has made it where people are shopping more online, I'm really quite fearful for some of our shopping centers. And I think we need to look at what places have done across the country in converting them to mixed use buildings, because a lot of stores are going to be shutting down, and I think more when their leases are up. I think that trend's going to continue.
I would tend to disagree with you, Madam Chairwoman, a little bit based in my business. You know, Todd's the banker, I'm the title guy. And I would tell you the shopping centers that are transferring at very high cap rates right now, office buildings that you all comment are being emptied, I don't see. I see them trading also, including in Baltimore City. You know, the area might be moving a little bit in Baltimore City over towards Inner Harbor and Harbor Point, but the other properties, you know, we've settled 3 or 4 major properties in the last month that are being converted to apartments near the old Mechanic Theater. You know, 301 North Charles, 110 North Charles. I mean, a lot of it there being converted there. And what is it? It's affordable housing apartments that people can afford. Either they're getting some kind of grants from the city. The city has a program for their apartments to lower the property taxes for the developer for 10 years. So that's helped make some more affordable, you know, things there. You know, I understand Amazon's there, but 10 years from now, there could be a new Amazon and a new something else. I agree that people are shopping online and the packages get delivered to my house 7 in the morning, 11 in the afternoon, and 7 o'clock at night. They never stop knocking on the door. But my wife and family still go to the grocery store, 3 or 4 of them. They still, you know, go to Costco. They still go to BJ's. Amazon's going to build a freight forwarding place at the old Walmart in Owings Mills. Well, you know, there still is going to be a retail presence. You know, I'm seeing, if anything, the only thing I'm seeing in shopping centers that tend to be closing is more the restaurants. And that's really interesting to me because I'd like to think we'd all like to get back out into restaurants rather than eating at home as we have for the last 2 years. You know, that might take some more time until, you know, this virus is really contained. I tell people, you know, and I continue to see Howard and his wife both just had COVID 2 weeks ago. Okay, first time in 2 years, we were both fine, but we're all going to get it. I tell people we're all going to get it a few times over time, and hopefully it does become like the flu, and if we accept it that way. But
thank you, Mr. Perlow.
I haven't seen.
Howard, I haven't seen my concierge in months because of the boxes surrounding him from Amazon, but it's all good. All right, folks. Does anyone else have any? This was wonderful discussion. Very, very good discussion. And for any of our newer board members, is there anything else you'd like to ask? Any questions or comments you'd like to make?
Madam Chair.
Yes, sir.
I live about 3 miles from the Pennsylvania line and about 3 miles from the Harford County line, and about 6 miles from Scott's person who lives there in Stewartstown. And we have several houses on and around the farm that we own, and we get at least a half a dozen calls each week. People wanting, number one is schools. They want to move out for the school, and the other is less density. They want to get away from all the density, and we hear this constantly. And land taxes are cheaper in York County and in other counties, and they're just looking at all the amenities of life when they want to move. And the first generation moves further away, and the second generation moves even further.
Thank you very much, Mr. McGinnis. And one thing that's really come out in this conversation tonight is we all represent different thoughts and philosophies and experiences, and that really represents the community that we serve. So it's really good because people, all of our community members, some want to live in the suburbs, some want to live in an urban environment. They're all different. So that's why this is a wonderful, wonderful board. And I'm very grateful to be able to serve on this board. Thank you. So if there's no more comments, then I think we're going to be calling for a motion.
I'll make a motion. Be it moved that the Baltimore County Planning Board recommends adoption of the 2021 Annual Growth Report dated April 21st, 2022, as prepared by the Baltimore County Department of Planning.
Ms. Meacham, is there anything you want to add?
Nope.
Is there any further comments by anyone else? If not,
Madam Chair, if I may just to compliment Jen and her team. In previous years, Qui Shao had done these annual growth reports. And so with Qui leaving, Jen and Chris and Miles and Austin just jumped in feet first and really did a terrific job. And really appreciate not only having them on staff, but I think they're true assets for all of you as you need more information.
I totally agree. I totally agree. So on that note, I'm going to call for your vote. When you hear your name, either say yay, you agree, or nay, you disagree. Mr. Schweitzer is not here. Mrs. Perlow's not here. Mr. Halipka.
Aye.
Mr. Johnson.
Yay.
Miss Wolfson.
Yay.
Mr. McGinnis.
Yay.
Mr. Heckman.
Yay.
Mr. Heinel.
Yay.
Mr. Perlow.
Yes.
Mr. Warren.
Yes.
Mr. Caligari.
Yes.
Mr. Fotis is not here. Mr. Avery. Mr. Avery. Did we lose him?
Yes.
Thank you. Miss German.
Yay.
And I agree. Thank you so much. This motion carries. Ms. Bensley will now fill us in on the report from the March 10th, 2022 and April 14th, 2022 meeting of the Landmark Preservation Commission. Ms. Bensley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. At their March 10th, 2022 meeting, the Landmarks Preservation Commission voted to issue 7 certificates of appropriateness for the following properties: the Moncton Hotel located at 1900 Moncton Road, the Bear property located at 4607 Prospect Avenue in Glendon, the DeLuca property located at 212 West Seminary Avenue in Lutherville, the Waltmeyer property located at 206 West Seminary Avenue in Lutherville, Valley Inn located at 10501 Falls Road in Timonium, the Sobel property located at 4704 Butler Road in Glendon, and Battle Acre located at 3115 North Point Road in Dundalk. At their April 14th, 2022 meeting, the Landmarks Preservation Commission voted to issue 6 certificates of appropriateness for the following properties: the Taylor property located at 703 Woodland Drive in Relay, the Pot Spring Farmhouse located at 2201 Pot Spring Road in Timonium, the Plano property located at 320 Morris Avenue in Lutherville, the Karras property located at 504 Sudbrook Lane in Sudbrook Park, the Altback Homan property located at 1018 Windsor Road in Sudbrook Park, and the Savage property located at 911 Adana Road in Sudbrook Park. And that concludes the report.
Thank you so much, Ms. Bensley, for that. Ms. Tracy will now fill us in on legislation recently passed by the County Council following our last meeting. Ms. Tracy.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. Recent County Council legislation. Bill 9-22 zoning regulations, uses permitted in the BM-CT zone for the purpose of permitting ground floor apartments in the BM-CT zone located north and west of Honeygo Boulevard, south of White Marsh Boulevard, and east of Perry Hall Boulevard within the White Marsh Mall sub-area of the Middle River redevelopment area in Master Plan 2020. Bill 10-22, zoning regulations, uses permitted in the business major zone for the purpose of permitting a Class 7 brewery under certain circumstances in the BM zone. Provisions include the location within the boundaries of the Ruxton, Riderwood, Lake Roland Community Plan area and within a specific distance from the Falls Road Light Rail stop and to the west of Falls Road. Bill 11-22, zoning regulations, uses permitted in the business local BL zone for the purpose of amending the types of theater use permitted and the permitted location of those theater venues in certain areas of the BL zone, if located in a Baltimore County Arts and Entertainment District. Bill 13-22, zoning regulations, uses permitted in the business local BL zone for the purpose of permitting certain food preparation facilities in certain areas of the BL zone with certain conditions, providing for certain parking regulations for food preparation facilities in certain areas, provided no on-site restaurant or carryout service is provided, and the facility is located in the Perry Hall Commercial Revitalization District. Bill 22-22, zoning regulations, revision of councilmanic districts for the purpose of revising and reconstituting the councilmanic districts of Baltimore County in accordance with the latest census figures published as a result of the U.S. Census of 2020, as required by Section 207 of the Baltimore County Charter. Resolution 6-22, review of PUD, the Heights at Hunt Valley. A resolution of the Baltimore County Council to approve the review of a proposed plan unit development in accordance with county law. The site for the PUD is located in the 3rd Councilmanic District and is approximately 31.74 plus or minus acres, zoned ML and RC6, and within the ERDL. The application was submitted by HV Holdings, LLC, and is now eligible for county review. The proposal includes an age-restricted community with multiple components. Resolution 13-22, amending the boundary of the Perry Hall Commercial Revitalization District. A resolution for the purpose of amending the boundary of the Perry Hall Commercial Revitalization District. The County Council has identified an area of land and certain properties on the eastern side of the 8800 block of Bel Air Road that has excellent redevelopment potential and has been added to the boundary. Resolution 14-22, amending the boundary of the Woodlawn Commercial Revitalization District. A resolution for the purpose of amending the boundary of the Woodlawn Commercial Revitalization District. The County Council has identified an area of land near the intersection of Interstate 695 and Interstate 70, adjacent to the current boundaries of the Woodlawn Commercial Revitalization District that has excellent redevelopment potential and has been added to the boundary. That concludes the report.
Thank you so much, Ms. Tracy. And that concludes our meeting for this evening. So if I can get a motion, then we will adjourn if there's no other discussion. Or if there's anything someone would like to talk about? If not, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
All in favor? Okay. Well, that's it. Thank you all. And thank you to my planning board members that volunteer your time to be here. We appreciate everything that you do.
Thank you,
Take
Madam
care and
Chair.
be well.
Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you.